Georgia is a country in the Caucasus region of Eurasia, located at the crossroads of Western Asia and Eastern Europe. It is bounded to the west by the Black Sea, to the north by Russia, to the south by Turkey and Armenia, and to the southeast by Azerbaijan. The capital and largest city is Tbilisi. Georgia covers a territory of 69,700 square kilometers, and its 2015 population is about 3.75 million. Georgia is a unitary, semi-presidential republic, with the government elected through a representative democracy. During the classical era, several independent kingdoms became established in what is now Georgia. The kingdoms of Caucasus and Iberia adopted Christianity in the early 4th century. A unified kingdom of Georgia reached the peak of its political and economic strength during the reign of King David IV and Queen Tamar in the 11th–12th centuries. Thereafter the area was dominated by various large empires for centuries, including the Mongols, the Ottoman Empire, and successive dynasties of Iran. In the late 18th century, the Kingdom of Kartli-Kakheti forged an alliance with the Russian Empire, and the area was annexed by Russia in 1801. The latter's rule over Georgia was confirmed in 1813 through the Treaty of Gulistan with Qajar Iran. Following the Russian Revolution in 1917, Georgia obtained independence, though only briefly, and established its first-ever republic under German and British protection, only to be invaded by Soviet Russia in 1921 and subsequently absorbed into the Soviet Union as the Georgian Soviet Socialist Republic. After restoring its independence once again in 1991, post-communist Georgia suffered from civil and economic crisis for most of the 1990s. This lasted until the peaceful Rose Revolution, when Georgia pursued a strongly pro-Western foreign policy, introducing a series of democratic and economic reforms aimed at NATO and European integration. The country's Western orientation soon led to the worsening of relations with Russia, culminating in the brief Russo-Georgian War. Georgia is a member of the Council of Europe and the Guam Organization for Democracy and Economic Development. It contains two de facto independent regions, Abkhazia and South Ossetia, which gained limited international recognition after the 2008 Russo-Georgian War. Georgia and a major part of the international community consider the regions to be part of Georgia's sovereign territory under Russian military occupation. Etymology: Georgia probably stems from the Persian designation of the Georgians, Gurgan, in the 11th and 12th centuries, adapted via Syriac Gurz and Gurzan and Arabic Jerzan. Law-based theories were given by Travelaj Akdavitri, who explained the name's origin by the popularity of St. George amongst Georgians, while Travelaj Shardang thought that Georgia came from Greek gamma epsilon omega rho gamma omicron sigma. As Professor Alexander Makabridze adds, these century-old explanations for the word Georgia, Georgians, are rejected by the scholarly community, who point to the Persian word Gurgan as the root of the word. Starting with the Persian word Gurgan, the word was later adopted in numerous other languages, including Slavic and West European languages. This term itself might have been established through the ancient Iranian appellation of the Near-Caspian region, which was referred to as Gorgan. The native name is Sakartvelo, derived from the core central Georgian region of Kartli, recorded from the 9th century, and in extended usage referring to the entire medieval kingdom of Georgia by the 13th century. The self-designation used by ethnic Georgians is Kartvelebi. The medieval Georgian chronicles present an eponymous ancestor of the Kartvelians, Kartlos, a great-grandson of Jaffa. However, scholars agree that the word is derived from the Karts, the latter being one of the Proto-Georgian tribes that emerged as a dominant group in ancient times. The name SKopp consists of two parts. Its root, Kartveli, specifies an inhabitant of the core Central Eastern Georgian region of Kartli, or Iberia as it is known in sources of the Eastern Roman Empire. Ancient Greeks and Romans referred to early Western Georgians as Colchians and Eastern Georgians as Iberians. History. Prehistory. The territory of modern-day Georgia was inhabited by Homo erectus since the Paleolithic era. The Proto-Georgian tribes first appear in written history in the 12th century BC. Archaeological finds and references in ancient sources reveal elements of early political and state formations characterized by advanced metallurgy and goldsmith techniques that date back to the 7th century BC and beyond. In fact, early metallurgy started in Georgia during the 6th millennium BC, associated with the Shuliviri-Shamu culture. The earliest evidence of wine to date has been found in Georgia, where 8,000-year-old wine jars were uncovered. Archaeological finds and references in ancient sources also reveal elements of early political and state formations characterized by advanced metallurgy and goldsmith techniques that date back to the 7th century BC and beyond. In fact, early metallurgy started in Georgia during the 6th millennium BC, associated with the Shuliviri-Shamu culture. Antiquity. The classical period saw the rise of a number of early Georgian states, the principal of which was Caucasus in the west and Iberia in the east. In the 4th century BC, a unified kingdom of Georgia, an early example of advanced state organization under one king and an aristocratic hierarchy, was established. In Greek mythology, Caucasus was the location of the golden fleece sought by Jason and the Argonauts in Apollonius Rhodius or epic tale Argonautica. The incorporation of the golden fleece into the myth may have derived from the local practice of using fleeces to sift gold dust from rivers. Known to its natives as Eurasia.Located, Caucasus was also the battlefield of the Lazark War fought between the Byzantine Empire and Sassanid Persia, after the Roman Republic completed its brief conquest of what is now Georgia in 66 BC. What is now Georgia became a primary objective of what would eventually turn out to be over 700 years of protracted Irano-Roman geopolitical rivalry and warfare. For the first centuries AD, the cult of Mithras, pagan beliefs, and Zoroastrianism were commonly practiced in Georgia. In 337 AD, King Mirian III declared Christianity as the state religion, giving a great stimulus to the development of literature, arts, and ultimately playing a key role in the formation of the unified Georgian nation. The acceptance led to the slow but sure decline of Zoroastrianism, which until the 5th century AD, appeared to have become something like a second established religion in Iberia, and was widely practiced there. In the ensuing period, until the course of the 7th century, what is now Georgia remained dominated by the Romans and Sasanians. Middle Ages up to early modern period, located on the crossroads of protracted Roman-Persian wars. The early Georgian kingdoms disintegrated into various feudal regions by the early Middle Ages. This made it easy for the remaining Georgian realms to fall prey to the early Muslim conquests in the 7th century. Despite the capture of Tbilisi in 645 AD by Muslims, Kartli Iberia retained considerable independence under local rulers. The Kingdom of Georgia reached its zenith in the 12th to early 13th centuries. This period during the reigns of David IV and his granddaughter Tamar has been widely termed as Georgia's golden age of the Georgian Renaissance. This early Georgian Renaissance, which preceded its Western European analogue, was characterized by impressive military victories, territorial expansion, and a cultural renaissance in architecture, literature, philosophy, and the sciences. The Golden Age of Georgia left a legacy of great cathedrals, romantic poetry and literature, and the epic poem, The Knight in the Panther's Skin. The latter, which is considered national epic. David suppressed dissent of feudal lords and centralized the power in his hands to effectively deal with foreign threats. In 1121, he decisively defeated much larger Turkish armies during the Battle of Didgori and liberated Tbilisi. At the height of its dominance, the kingdom's influence spanned from the south of modern-day Ukraine to the northern provinces of Persia, while also maintaining religious possessions in the Holy Land and Greece. The 29-year reign of Tamar, the first female ruler of Georgia, is considered the most successful in Georgian history. Tamar was given the title King of Kings. She succeeded in neutralizing opposition and embarked on an energetic foreign policy aided by the downfall of the rival powers of the Seljuks and Byzantium. Supported by a powerful military ally, Tamar was able to build on the successes of her predecessors to consolidate an empire which dominated the Caucasus, and extended over large parts of present-day Azerbaijan, Armenia, and eastern Turkey as well as parts of northern Iran, until its collapse under the Mongol attacks within 2 decades after Tamar's death in 1213. The revival of the Kingdom of Georgia was set back after Tbilisi was captured and destroyed by the Khwarezmian leader Jalal ad-Din in 1226. The Mongols were expelled by George V of Georgia, son of Demetrius II of Georgia, who was named Brilliant for his role in restoring the country's previous strength and Christian culture. George V was the last great king of the unified Georgian state. After his death, different local rulers fought for their independence from central Georgian rule, until the total disintegration of the kingdom in the 15th century. Georgia was further weakened by several disastrous invasions by Tamerlane. Invasions continued, giving the kingdom no time for restoration, with both black and white sheep Turkomans constantly raiding its southern provinces. As a result, the Kingdom of Georgia collapsed into anarchy by 1466 and fragmented into 3 independent kingdoms and 5 semi-independent principalities. Neighboring large empires subsequently exploited the internal division of the weakened country, and beginning in the 16th century up to the late 18th century, Safavid Iran and Ottoman Turkey subjugated the eastern and western regions of Georgia, respectively. The rulers of regions that remained partly autonomous organized rebellions on various occasions. However, subsequent Iranian and Ottoman invasions further weakened local kingdoms and regions. As a result of incessant wars and deportations, the population of Georgia dwindled to 250,000 inhabitants at the end of the 18th century. Eastern Georgia, composed of the regions of Kartli and Kakheti, had been under Iranian suzerainty since 1555 following the Peace of Amasya signed with neighboring rivaling Ottoman Turkey. With the death of Nader Shah in 1747, both kingdoms broke free of Iranian control and were reunified through a personal union under the energetic King Heraclius II in 1762. Heracl, who had risen to prominence through the Iranian ranks, was awarded the crown of Kartli by Nader himself in 1744 for his loyal service to him. Heracl nevertheless stabilized eastern Georgia to a degree in the ensuing period and was able to guarantee its autonomy throughout the Iranian Zand period. In 1783, Russia and the Eastern Georgian Kingdom of Kartli-Kakheti signed the Treaty of Georges, by which Georgia abjured any dependence on Persia or another power, and made the kingdom a protectorate of Russia, which guaranteed Georgia's territorial integrity and the continuation of its reigning Bagrationi dynasty in return for prerogatives in the conduct of Georgian foreign affairs. However, despite this commitment to defend Georgia, Russia rendered no assistance when the Iranians invaded in 1795. capturing and sacking Tbilisi while massacring its inhabitants, as the new heir to the throne sought to reassert Iranian hegemony over Georgia. Despite a punitive campaign subsequently launched against Iran in 1796, this period culminated in the 1801 Russian violation of the Treaty of Georgisk and annexation of eastern Georgia, followed by the abolition of the royal Bagrationi dynasty, as well as the autocephaly of the Georgian Orthodox Church. Pyotr Bagration, one of the descendants of the abolished House of Bagrationi, would later join the Russian army and rise to be a prominent general in the Napoleonic Wars. Georgia in the Russian Empire. On the 22nd of December 1800, Tsar Paul I of Russia, at the alleged request of the Georgian King George XII, signed the proclamation on the incorporation of Georgia within the Russian Empire, which was finalized by a decree on 8 January 1801, and confirmed by Tsar Alexander I on 12 September 1801. The Georgian envoy in St. Petersburg reacted with a note of protest that was presented to the Russian Vice-Chancellor Prince Kurakin. In May 1801, under the oversight of General Karl Heinrich von Noring, Imperial Russia transferred power in eastern Georgia to the government headed by General Ivan Petrovich Lazarev. The Georgian nobility did not accept the decree until, on 12 April 1802, when Noring assembled the nobility at the Sioni Cathedral and forced them to take an oath on the imperial crown of Russia. Those who disagreed were temporarily arrested. In the summer of 1805, Russian troops on the Askarani River near Zagam defeated the Iranian army during the Russo-Persian War and saved Tbilisi from reconquest now that it was officially part of the imperial territories. Russian suzerainty over eastern Georgia was officially finalized with Iran in 1813 following the Treaty of Gulistan. Following the annexation of eastern Georgia, the Western Georgian Kingdom of Emerita was annexed by Tsar Alexander I, the last Emiratian king and the last Georgian Bagrationi ruler. Solomon II died in exile in 1815, after attempts to rally people against Russia and to enlist foreign support against the latter had been in vain. From 1803 to 1878, as a result of numerous Russian wars now against Ottoman Turkey, several of Georgia's previously lost territories, such as Zagera, were recovered, and also incorporated into the empire. The Principality of Guria was abolished and incorporated into the empire in 1829, whilst Vanetta was gradually annexed in 1858. Mingrelia, although a Russian protectorate since 1803, was not absorbed until 1867. Declaration of independence. After the Russian Revolution of 1917, Georgia declared independence on 26 May 1918. In the midst of the Russian Civil War, the Menshevik Georgian Social Democratic Party won the parliamentary election. Its leader, Noj Ordania, became prime minister. The 1918 Georgian-Armenian War, which erupted over parts of Georgian provinces populated mostly by Armenians, ended because of British intervention. In 1918–1919, Georgian General Georgy Marsniashvili led an attack against the White Army led by Moiseev and Denikin in order to claim the Black Sea coastline from Turps to Sochi and Adler for independent Georgia. The country's independence did not last long. Georgia was under British protection from 1918 to 1920. Georgia in the Soviet Union. In February 1921, Georgia was attacked by the Red Army. The Georgian army was defeated and the Social Democratic government fled the country. On the 25th of February 1921, the Red Army entered Tbilisi and installed a communist government loyal to Moscow, led by Georgian Bolshevik Philip Makaradze. Nevertheless, there remained significant opposition to the Bolsheviks, and this culminated in the August Uprising of 1924. Soviet rule was firmly established only after this uprising was suppressed. Georgia was incorporated into the Transcaucasian SFSR, which united Georgia, Armenia and Azerbaijan. Later, in 1936, the TSFSR was disaggregated into its component elements and Georgia became the Georgian SSR. Joseph Stalin, an ethnic Georgian-born Iosif Vissarionis Dzhugashvili and Gori, was prominent among the Bolsheviks. Stalin was to rise to the highest position, leading the Soviet Union from the 3rd of April 1922 until his death on the 5th of March 1953. Georgia, after restoration of independence on the 9th of April 1991, shortly before the collapse of the Soviet Union, Georgia declared independence. On the 26th of May 1991, Gamzat Kadyrov was elected as the first president of independent Georgia. Gamzat Kadyrov stoked Georgian nationalism and vowed to assert Tbilisi's authority over regions such as Abkhazia and South Ossetia that had been classified as autonomous oblasts under the Soviet Union. He was soon deposed in a bloody coup d'état. From the 22nd of December 1991 to the 6th of January 1992. The coup was instigated by part of the National Guards and a paramilitary organization called Madrioni. The country became embroiled in a bitter civil war, which lasted until nearly 1995. Eduard Shevardnadze returned to Georgia in 1992 and joined the leaders of the coup, Tengiz Kitovani and Jabir Ioseliani, to head a triumvirate called the State Council. Simmering disputes within two regions of Georgia, Abkhazia and South Ossetia, between local separatists and the majority Georgian populations, erupted into widespread inter-ethnic violence and wars. Supported by Russia, Abkhazia and South Ossetia achieved de facto independence from Georgia, with Georgia retaining control only in small areas of the disputed territories. In 1995, Shevardnadze was officially elected as president of Georgia. Roughly 230,000 to 250,000 Georgians were massacred or expelled from Abkhazia by Abkhaz separatists and North Caucasian volunteers in 1992–1993. Around 23,000 Georgians fled South Ossetia as well, and many Ossetian families were forced to abandon their homes in the Bohemy region and move to Russia. In 2003, Shevardnadze was deposed by the Rose Revolution, after Georgian opposition and international monitors asserted that the November 2 parliamentary elections were marred by fraud. The revolution was led by Mikhail Saakashvili, Zurab Zhvania and Nino Burjanadze, former members and leaders of Shevardnadze's ruling party. Mikhail Saakashvili was elected as president of Georgia in 2004. Following the Rose Revolution, a series of reforms were launched to strengthen the country's military and economic capabilities. The new government's efforts to reassert Georgian authority in the southwestern autonomous Republic of Algeria led to a major crisis early in 2004. Success in Algeria encouraged Saakashvili to intensify his efforts, but without success in breakaway South Ossetia. These events, along with accusations of Georgian involvement in the Second Chechen War, resulted in a severe deterioration of relations with Russia, fueled also by Russian skirmishes open assistance and support to the two secessionist areas. Despite these increasingly difficult relations, in May 2005 Georgia and Russia reached a bilateral agreement by which Russian military bases in Batumi and Akarkalaki were withdrawn. Russia withdrew all personnel and equipment from these sites by December 2007, while failing to withdraw from the Gudautar base in Abkhazia, which it was required to vacate after the adoption of the Adapted Conventional Armed Forces in Europe Treaty during the 1999 Istanbul Summit. Russo-Georgian War. And since political tensions between Georgia and Russia began escalating in April 2008. On 1 August 2008, South Ossetian separatists blew up a Georgian military vehicle, injuring 5 Georgian peacekeepers, which Georgian snipers responded to by killing 6 South Ossetian militiamen. Low-level skirmishes followed, with South Ossetian forces shelling some villages under Georgian control, eliciting responses from Georgian peacekeepers. On 7 August 2008, Georgian forces began shelling the South Ossetian capital, Tbilisi. This was followed, on 8 August 2008, by an advance of Georgian army infantry, tanks, and police commandos into South Ossetia. The action was supported by artillery and air support, leading to the capture of a number of key South Ossetian towns and retreat of Russian peacekeepers and South Ossetian forces. However, after a Russian peacekeepers base was shelled and personnel killed, units of the Russian 58th Army, supported by irregular forces, entered South Ossetia through the Roki Tunnel, thus leading to a 3-day battle which left the city of Tbilisi in ruins. Georgian forces were subsequently forced to retreat, and the Russian Air Force began launching airstrikes against Georgian forces in South Ossetia, and multiple targets inside Georgia proper. The Georgian Air Force resisted and later continued to carry out airstrikes against Russian troops. A second front was opened when the separatist Republic of Abkhazia, with Russian support, launched an offensive against Georgian troops in the Kidori Valley. Georgian troops offered minimal resistance and soon withdrew. Russian paratroopers launched raids against military bases in Senaki, Georgia, from Abkhazia, whilst the Russian Navy stationed a task force off the coast of Abkhazia and sank a Georgian Coast Guard cutter. Russian forces, upon crossing into Georgia proper, soon entered Gori, where Georgian forces had earlier regrouped before retreating to Tbilisi. Irregulars such as Ossetians, Chechens and Cossacks followed. Looting, killing, and arson was reported. Russian troops removed military equipment abandoned by retreating Georgian troops in Gori and the port of Potter, where several naval and coast guard vessels moored in the harbour were scuttled. On August 12, 2008, President Medvedev announced a halt to further Russian military operations in Georgia and ordered a gradual withdrawal from Gori, Potter and other established checkpoints. Despite this, Russian forces remained in South Ossetia and Abkhazia, the independence of which it soon recognized. Because of the intensive fighting in South Ossetia, there were many disputed reports about the number of casualties on both sides, which targets had fallen under aerial attacks, the status of troop movements, and the most current location of the front line between the Georgian and Russian Ossetian units. Since the war, South Ossetian and Russian officials have made a number of claims that the Georgian army was responsible for killing 1,400–2,000 South Ossetian civilians. Human Rights Watch and European Union investigators in South Ossetia have subsequently accused Russia of exaggerating the scale of such casualties. All sides sustained casualties, with Georgia accounting for the greatest number of military casualties, with 170 confirmed dead or missing. Since the war, Georgia has maintained that Abkhazia and South Ossetia are under Russian occupation and remain legally part of Georgia. Georgia has gained much international support for this position, although attempts at limiting international access to and enforcing an economic embargo of the two breakaway regions have produced mixed results.